Welcome on Easy Learning. With your effort and with your courage, you helped me to just involve and in other chapters. So I decided to also continue the videos, and I will have been continuing in future too. Now today I have decided to cover a chapter. This chapter is A Child is Born, written by Germaine Greer. As usual, as I have told you that my first priority is for reading. The reading is a good skill, and for other parts of the language like writing, like speaking, and like doing other kinds of the things in any language, you need to just read the language as much as this is possible. This is not applied only on English language. It is applied on each and every language found everywhere in the world. You need to just read as much as possible with correct pronunciation. The same I am going to do with this chapter. So you have to also read with me as many times as it is possible to make the pronunciation more and more correct and perfect. Okay, without wasting the time, now I start reading this chapter. A Child is Born by Germaine Greer. Germaine Greer, he was born in 1939. Death is unknown. Born and educated in Australia, is a famous feminist writer. In her well-known works, The Female Eunuch, 1970, Sex and Destiny, The Politics of Human Fertility, 1984, and The Change, 1991. She explores the social and cultural aspects of life of women. She believes that socio-cultural practices are designed to suit male interest. At the same time, they further subjugate women. The present piece, A Child is Born, is an extract from, it is a misspelled, from her book Sex and Destiny, The Politics of Human Fertility. It explores the cultural peculiarities of the East and West regarding childbirth and parent-child relationship. A Child is Born. The ways of managing childbirth in traditional societies are many and varied. Their usefulness stems directly from the fact that they are accepted culturally and collectively, so that the mother does not have the psychic burden of reinventing the procedures. Even though the potential catastrophes are alive in the memory of her community and the index of anxiety high, a ritual approach to pregnancy which hems the pregnant woman about with taboos and prohibitions helps make the anxiety manageable. A woman who observes all the prohibitions and carries out all the rites will be actively involved in holding the unknown at bay. She will have other reinforcements. For many of the ritual observances of pregnancy involve the participation of others who should support her, primarily her husband, then her kinsfolk, and then the other members of her community. Some of these behaviors will be sensible and useful, others magical, but they will all increase her sense of security and her conviction that she is conducting the pregnancy, not that it is conducting her. The remnants of this kind of prophylaxis can be found in the persistence of old wives' tales about pregnancy, even in our own super-rational and confused lifestyle. One university graduate of my acquaintance, who approached her pregnancy as if it were her term assignment, meticulously footnoting every development, clung to her prenatal exercises as a form of ritual observance, as well as a helpful preparation for the physical exploit of childbirth, performing them in deep silence and total recollection at the same time, every day, come hell or high water. As well, she observed the old die-hard superstition that acquiring equipment and apparel for baby before the birth was bad luck, and so one of my godchildren shot into the world without crib or napkins. Considerable effort had gone into saying that the mother had every opportunity to enjoy her baby, but after her training for unmedicated childbirth for months, in the event the hospital refused to believe she was in second stage labor until her daughter's head had appeared. The hospital staff was so uncooperative about breastfeeding that mother and daughter discharged themselves after 2 days. The birth was virtually unattended in non-technocratic societies. Except for remarkable accidents, birth is always attended. Clearly, infant and mother mortality is greater in traditional births, but in our anxiety to avoid death, we may have destroyed the significance of the experience for the vast majority who live. No one would deny that each infant and particularly every maternal death is a tragedy to be prevented if at all possible, nor that modern obstetric care, which has developed in the hospital setting, has been at least partly responsible for the dramatic decrease in both maternal and prenatal mortality over the past half century. But it is not necessarily perverse to question whether our present priority should be to reach minimum figures for perinatal mortality at any price, when this includes giving up things which free human beings have often felt to be more important than their own survival, such as freedom to live their own lives their own way and to make individual choices in line with their own sense of values. It is the reference from Kitzinger, Sheila and John A. Davis, The Place of Birth, London, 1978. In many societies, women still go forth from their mothers' houses at marriage to live with their mother-in-law and the wives of their husbands' brothers. It is a truism of anthropology that such women do not become members of their new family until they have born a child. If we consider that in such societies the marriage was quite likely to have arranged, it is understandable that the bride too longs for the child who will stand in the same intimate relationship to her as she with her own mother. The Western interpretation of such modes is that they are backward, cruel, and wrong. It is assumed that the sexual relations between the spouses are perfunctory and exploitative, and that all mothers-in-laws are unjust and vindicative. One of the greatest difficulties in the way of feminists who are not chauvinistic and want to learn from women who still live within a female society is the tendency of those women to withdraw into silent opposition when participating in international fora conducted in languages which they cannot speak with fluency. Women officials of the Sudanese government told me that they had given up going to international conferences, even though the trips were a tremendous treat, because they were tired of being told about their own lives instead of being consulted. Thus, we in the West would regard it as outrageous that a woman could lose her own name and become known as the mother of her firstborn once she has borne it, although, of course, most of us do not protest against the sinking of the woman's lineage under her husband's name at marriage. In many traditional societies, The relationship between mother and child is more important than the relationship between husband and wife. In some, indeed, the child's relationship with the rest of his family is as important or even more important than either. A number of social usages may stress the child's relationship with the rest of his kin group at the expense of that with his parents. His aunts and uncles may be permitted to greater physical intimacy with him in public than his parents. In many traditional societies in Africa and India, the biological family is deliberately weakened by enforced abstinence or actual separation of parents in order to strengthen the extended family. Thus, children are not born at the whim of the parents, but in response to a broader pressure from the whole group. It is also the reference from Caldwell, J.C., The Economics Rationality of High Fertility, an investigation illustrated with Nigerian Survey Data Population Studies, Volume 31, Number 1. The woman who satisfies the longings of her peers by producing the child they are all anxious to see finds her achievement celebrated in ways that dramatize her success. Among the few first-person accounts of how this works in practice in this one from the young Silheti's woman. If a girl is lucky and her parents are alive, she goes to her mother's house for the last few months of her pregnancy and about the first 3 months of the baby's life. There she gets a lot of love and care. She is asked, would you like to eat? What do you fancy? All the time she is looked after. The whole matter of pregnancy is one of celebration. When the baby is born, it is an occasion of joy for the whole family. The naming ceremony is lovely. It is held when the boy is 7 days old. A new dress is brought for it and a new sari for the mother. There is feasting and singing until late at night. The woman and girl gather and sing songs. Garlands of turmeric and garlic are worn to ward off evil spirits. That's when the name is chosen. The ceremony is held for the birth of a boy or a girl. Of course, it is considered better to have a boy, but the birth of a girl is celebrated with the same joy by the women in the family. We sit together, eating pan and singing. Some of us might be young, unmarried girls, other aged ladies of 40 or 50. There are so many jokes, so much laughter. People took so funny eating pan and singing. The men do not take much part. They may come and have a look at the baby, but the singing, the gathering together at night, it is all women. The songs are simple songs which are rarely written down. They are about the lives of women in Bengal. It is the reference from Wilson Amrit, Finding a Voice, Asian Women in Britain, London, 1978. Among the rewards of pregnancy in this case, as in many others, is that the woman gets to go home to visit her mother and sisters. The nostalgic tone of the descriptions, which is clearly tinged with rose, may be the product of the contrast that this young woman finds in England. Another of the Asian women who found a voice in Amrit Wilson's book gives a similarly rosy picture of rearing a child in Bangladesh. In Bangladesh, children under the age of 5 or 6 are looked after by the whole family. All the children of the joint family are looked after together. They are taken to the pound of a bath, perhaps by one daughter-in-law, and she bathes them all. Then they all come in and sit down to eat. Perhaps the youngest daughter-in-law has cooked the meal. Another woman feeds them. As for playing, the children play out of doors with natural objects. Here people say that Asian children don't play with toys. In Bangladesh, they don't need toys. They make their own simple things. In the afternoon, they love to hear Rupthoka fairy tales. Maybe there is a favorite aunt. She tells them these stories, but at night when they get sleepy, they always go to their mothers and sleep in their embrace. But other women do help a lot. In fact, they have such strong relationships with the child that it is not uncommon for them to be called big mother or small mother. It is also the reference of Wilson Emmerich. All technological change causes social problem. The impact of Western medicine in traditional societies is one of the most problematic areas of modernization. The prestige of the white coats is enormous. The respect for their miraculous hypodermics total. The pressure of expectation makes for aggressive and dramatic procedures, even when the health status of the patients is too poor to withstand them. Allopathic doctors in peasant communities are dependent upon expensive drugs, sparkling equipment, and lots of electricity, most of which they have not got in sufficient quantity. Where foreign aid has established that temple of our religion, the hospital, it must make a ritual display of its power with horrible results. Sheila Kitzinger visited an enormous modern hospital for born-to patients in South Africa, and this is what she saw. The delivery ward was full of groaning, whirling women, the majority laboring alone. Oxytocin drips and pumps were in widespread use. This was the meeting place of the old Africa and the new technology of the West. Pools of blood lay on the floor like sacrificial outpourings, and born-to nurses were happy to leave them there as a witness of the blessings of the earth. While they busied themselves with technologically sophisticated modern equipment and ignored the laboring women as far as possible, which it was not so difficult to do as they did not speak the same languages anyway. Birth was very far from normal here, and it was conducted in such a way that I had seen before in American hospitals catering for black clinic patients from large urban ghettos. Impersonal conveyor belt obstetrics accompanied by a plethora of technical innovations and machinery. It is reference from Kitzinger, Women as Mothers. If we turn birth from a climactic personal experience into a personal disaster, it matters little that the result is more likely to be a live child. Women will not long continue to offer up their bodies and minds to such brutality, especially if there is no one at home to welcome the child, to praise the mother for her courage and to help her raise it. In fact, peasant communities are more level-headed and skeptical of us and our methods than we realize, and they have resisted the intrusion of our chromium-plated technology more successfully than we like to think. They know that the death attends too frequently in the traditional birthplace, but they also know that there are worse fates than death. Nevertheless, all that stops our technology from reaching into every hut and hovel is poverty. The cultural hegemony of Western technology is total. The voices of a few women raised in warning cannot be heard over the humming and throbbing of our machines, which is probably just as well, for if we succeed in crushing all pride and dignity out of childbearing, the population explosion will take care of itself. With this, though I read the chapter very fast because it would be a long video. From the next part of the video, I will explain them from English to Hindi in a better way. Okay, so you can share this video as many as to your friends who are in the need of ours.